Okay, welcome everybody to the Public Safety, Transportation, and Environment Subcommittee hearing. We're hearing 4 budgets today: Maryland Tax Court, Department of Planning, Maryland Automobile Insurance Fund, and Maryland Environmental Service. Depending on whether we have the Secretary of Planning, I know she had a cabinet meeting in Towson by noon. Okay, we might have to rearrange the order. Okay. But we will start with the Maryland Tax Court, and Jacob is our analyst. Jacob, take it away.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you, Madam Chair. So we'll start today with a quick overview of the Tax Court. Maryland Tax Court is an independent state agency tasked with providing the highest level of administrative review on the decisions of Maryland's taxing authorities. These decisions include decisions from the Comptroller of Maryland, the State Department of Assessments and Taxation, and other collectors. Appeals from the Maryland Tax Court are then directed to the circuit courts. The Maryland Tax Court is composed of 5 judges who are appointed by the governor for 6-year terms. Maryland Tax Court's stated goal is to provide taxpayers and taxing authorities with efficient and fair hearings regarding any tax issue. Taking a quick look at just an overview of the budget for this year, the fiscal 2024 budget increases $15,885, or 1.7%, to $953,714. So you'll see here in this exhibit the 2022 actual cost, the 2023 working appropriation, and the 2024 allowance. Breaking down those numbers with an overview of the agency's spending, 91% of the fiscal 2024 analysis, and I'm now on page 2 if you're following on paper, pardon me, 91% of the fiscal 2024 allowance is allocated towards personnel expenses, with other categories including contractual service charges, state service, and fixed charges, along with equipment, supplies, and materials. And the remaining 1% is spent on communication and travel. Changes to the budget this year. As I previously mentioned, the budget grows by almost $16,000, a 1.7% increase. The largest change is for reclassification of positions, followed by an increase in employee and retiree health insurance, as well as the annualization of the November 2022 4.5% cost of living adjustment. The other changes seen on page 3 are a change in the accrued leave payout, which wasn't needed as heavily this year in the fiscal 24 budget, along with an increase in the Department of Information Technology Services allocation and some other small changes. Looking at performance at the tax court, we're on page 5. After 2 years of decline, the number of appeals filed with the tax court in fiscal 2022 increased by nearly 11% compared to fiscal 21. This occurred because the agencies responsible for issuing decisions to be heard on appeal worked through their COVID-19 related case backlogs. While Maryland Tax Court is not currently functioning with a backlog, cases are projected to further increase in fiscal 23 when those actual numbers become available to approximately 1,000 cases, which is still 20% below pre-pandemic levels due to this continued backlog reduction. So we have a graph here showing both the actual and projected data. So the blue bars represent the number of appeals filed in that year. The green bar that goes directly across the top shows the 90% goal. The yellow bar is the percentage of appeals which are cleared in 8 months, and the red line is the percentage of appeals cleared in 12 months. This clearance rate of 90% is the benchmark set by the tax court for the 8-month goal. The last time this was achieved was in fiscal 2010. Therefore, the Maryland Tax Court should comment on how the remaining COVID-19 backlog in other agencies is impacting their ability to operate efficiently in terms of their benchmarks, absent any changes in operational procedure or organizational structure. The recommended action, which is found on page 7, if you're following on paper, is to concur with the governor's allowance. And that concludes my part of the presentation.
Thank you, Jacob. Any questions for the analyst? Okay, so unfortunately, and this is one of the smallest agencies perhaps in all of state government, with a limited staff, they have an interim head, and that person is out sick with COVID, so they're not able to be here. But I am very interested in what they need to get back on track with their clearance rate. So if the subcommittee is interested in having a one-on-one with the interim clerk,
I don't think his title is interim, pardon me.
clerk, chief clerk,
I believe.
okay. I'm going to welcome subcommittee members to have that one-on-one meeting with him when he is feeling better. Senator Jackson.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you, Jacob. So when you look back at the graph on the projection, the estimated, the 90% is the goal, obviously, and we understand COVID is the projection solely based on the fact that we're recovering from COVID, or is there any other information that lends to that? We're talking Exhibit 3, sorry. From 22, we're down to 70% or so, 74%. And the estimate for 2023, percent of appeals cleared. The estimate is that it's going to go back up to 90 where we want it. Is that solely based on the COVID recovery, or is there any other indicators that, or any other information that we have to, and they're not here to answer, I'm just wondering if you knew.
Thank you, Senator, for the question. That's not information that I have available to me.
No problem.
But I'm happy to ask them, or as the chair previously mentioned, we could
Gotcha.
ask them together.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Yep. We're going to have that one-on-one as soon as we are able. Okay. Thank you very much. I know you have to run downstairs.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. We are going to move on to MAFE, if that's okay, if we have Samantha. Okay. And hold on Department of Planning. Okay. Whenever you're ready, Samantha. Okay. I guess I have that already out.
All right, so just a reminder, the Maryland Automobile Insurance Fund is an independent, non-budgeted agency created in 1972. It has two divisions: an insured division that essentially subsidizes auto insurance policies for drivers who do not directly qualify for plans in the private market. And then it has a uninsured division that handles claims filed against uninsured drivers. They operate on a calendar year, which makes their budget a little bit different. They reported updated numbers to us, updated from our budget system, showing an increase of 2.2 million or 8.2% to 29 million projected for 2023. Most of this goes to paying out on claims, even while this is somewhat volatile from year to year. And then otherwise, it's mostly personnel costs. The changes from 22 to 2023 include increases in salaries and benefits in both divisions to help address problems with attrition. My bookmarks. The key issue to address is the surplus decay in the insured division, although there is also a problem in the uninsured division. Policies are purchased, and that provides most of the income to support the surplus and paying out claims each year. So, in a given year, when the claim amounts paid out are higher than the income from policies, then you're going to draw on the surplus. And if that happens every year, then you're drawing on the surplus each year, which explains the decline since 2007. So essentially, since the Great Recession, it's been difficult for them to recover. There has been some activity on their part in terms of investing to try to make up that difference. So they cashed out, I think, 2 years ago. I don't know the rest of the activity they can comment on to help with that, but that continues to be a problem. And since 2007, that's about 80% of its value lost. since that time. Contributing to this are also a decreased number of policies written, and then also, along with that, policies in force because of issues with policy cancellations. And let's see, and then the rate inadequacy. As I said, the plans are subsidized. The rates, the policy prices are lower than in the private market. So it depends on the number of claims paid out each year and the severity of the claims. And they've reported that in 2022, there have been more claims and at higher costs, partly due to inflation. So you can see that's across all of Maryland. And so we've recommended asking them for a report on policy options being considered. One of them being to expand the population that is eligible for a MAIF policy plan. But I think there have been others that they're discussing. And then the uninsured division has a similar problem, but they are funded from MVA, insurance lapse fees, and there has not been a change in the amount that they receive. I think they said yesterday, since 1992, a very long time ago. But right now, they reported there's $2 million in active repayment that they are trying to collect on from the claim debts from the individuals responsible for uninsured incidents with uninsured drivers. And then there's around 61 million written off that is not no longer being pursued. And they noted that there is a certain percent of that population that is incarcerated, around 11%, that causes some of the difficulty in collecting. But, so that includes some of the, well, there's decreased claim activity here, but most of the problems in collecting on these claims. One problem with this is that they reported was that there was in 2020 an elimination of the driver's license suspension consequence for unpaid debts, which that eliminated one of the incentives for individuals to voluntarily pay those debts. And so there's been an increase in involuntary means of collecting, including wage garnishments and use of the tax refund intercept program. But as you can see, overall, the total amount that they're collecting has been less in the last 3 years since that change. And I think that's all I have. Otherwise, we concur with the governor's budget, and I can take questions or defer to the agency. Thank you.
Thank you, Samantha. Questions? Yes, Senator Jackson.
So, thank you for your analysis. Quick question for you. You spoke of the lower number of policies being written, and I believe I heard you say that there are other policies that were lower than the policies that were offered. Was that the reason for that?
That was a comment made yesterday that it had to do with the private market prices. So I don't know enough about the private market to say, so I would defer to the agency to comment on that further.
All right, thank you. And secondly, Madam Chair, so from the debt collections that no longer, due to legislation submitted a few years ago, that we passed a few years ago, that no longer equated to driver's license losses, did that also include the child support enforcement component of that, or do you know?
I don't know.
Okay, thanks, Madam Chair.
Okay. Seeing no further questions, we have with us Al Redmer, Executive Director, and David Pfeiffer, Chief Operating Officer for MAIF.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the committee. Good to be here. I will first thanks to Samantha and also Jennifer Spangler from DBM for their work on this. I will address the questions requested in the analysis. First, I'll go to the senator. The reason for the deterioration in policy count, I'll give you the long-term view and the short-term view. Insurance companies are in the business of taking risk. Typically, they don't like to take a risk unless they can quantify the risk and that they can accurately price for the risk. If you look at our history, there were times we had hundreds of thousands of policies. Back in the day when I was a young guy in the insurance business, and that was a long time ago, I would add, if you wanted a car quote, I'd ask you a half a dozen questions. I would pull a big book that would be a rate manual, and I would do a calculation based on a half a dozen or so criteria and figure out what your rate is. And because the insurance companies didn't know a lot about you other than the things I identified, if you were 25 years old or you had a couple of tickets or what have you, they would maybe steer clear of you. And obviously credit is an issue as well. We don't use credit, by the way. But now, with the advent of technology and publicly available data, there is no rate manual. You put the same half a dozen or so things into the computer, and then they have these sophisticated algorithms where they pull publicly available data, run it through their algorithms. Instead of pricing your policy on a half a dozen or so points of data, it might be 800 or 1,000 points of data. And because of all the data that's available, they know more about you and your background, and the industry has become much more comfortable in quantifying their risk and pricing the risk. So they have a greater appetite to write risk, which means those are less folks that have to come to us. And that's been the evolution over the last, decade or two. Fast forward to 2020, where we saw a significant drop in our policies. So if you remember 2020, we had COVID. We shut down the economy. People stopped driving, and naturally they stopped driving and they stopped hitting things. So all of us in the business did not pay out as much in claims. And the standard insurance market generally ended 2020 flush with cash. Business 101 is you have to deploy that cash somewhere. And some of the carriers made the determination that they were going to increase their market share in Maryland. So the carriers reduced premiums and they liberalized their underwriting. They were taking risks in 2021 and early 22 that they would not have taken years before. And so they wrote a lot more policies, which meant less for us. So we saw a deterioration in our policy count as folks left Maryland Auto to go into the standard market for lower premiums. Now, when you write Maryland Auto type policies, sooner or later you pay Maryland Auto type claims. And these carriers have begun losing money. And that's not just in Maryland, it's across the country. They're losing big money in 2022. So the carriers, the standard market has reversed course. They increased their premiums. They began tightening their underwriting. So since the second quarter of 2022, we have seen a consistent and significant increase in new business as they've tightened up, and that new business has come back to us.
Thank you. So, thank you for that.
Mm-hmm.
I remember that prophetic conversation when I was on the House side with Senator, I was the vice chair and approached with Senator McIntosh. I do remember that, and it has come to fruition. I thank you for that. The second part, if you could, about, before that, the locales, right? So the location that I lived as a young driver
Sure.
was we saw, I come from the law enforcement business, so you saw folks using different addresses to get insurance.
Correct.
Because if I lived inside of either of the beltways or in the National Capital Region.
Sure.
So could you speak to that and the consideration of that when you write insurance?
Sure. Well, with, geography is what drives a big part of the price that we all pay. So rule number one is all carriers rate geography a little bit different. So when in doubt, shop, because your location might be in a different, more favorable rating classification from carrier to carrier. But generally, those of us that live in more if you're in an urban area, there's more cars. If there's more cars, there's more likelihood that you're going to. That does have an impact on the rates, but again, all carriers to do it however they like. Yep. So with that, I'll go into the two areas that we were. And the short version is those reductions were planned, and they were based on the reduction reduce that decreases the need for employees to service those employees. So there has been a gradual and were voluntary, folks moving to another employer or retirement, those types of things. We had 16% reduction, and again, that was all planned and voluntary. Now, as we have seen an increase as those policies increase and the claims increase along with that. The unique role that we play and the policyholders that we have significantly higher arrived here. I didn't have too many surprises, but the one surprise I had was I expected that our 20-some thousand %60 are with us because of poor or no credit. And again, when we rate policies, we don't use credit, but almost as an example, low income communities, they were hit first by the economics. They were hit the hardest. 14%. For those that are on our installment plans, and as a reminder, our installment plans were the cancellation rate for our installment plans are 37%, and those that finance with a premium finance company are a churn rate. Some of those, that 50% that cancels, they come back and get insured a They buy a policy and they get on the street, and then they run out of money. And that policy gets canceled, and they scrape up a little more money, they come back. All of that is, with a higher cancellation rate, we have a higher operating expense as we have to service the committee might have.
Senator Solling?
Thank you. Appreciate all the information. There's, at times, a couple issues with people that get insurance and then they cancel. And of course, you've hit one of them, financing.
Sure.
But some of them also get vehicles and they get it, that they get that insurance and then they don't have the money, so they don't keep up with their policy. They don't have insurance.
Correct.
And those that are being good and faithful servants of their insurance and doing the right thing, at times get into situations where they're hit, and you have somebody that doesn't have insurance. And we got to find ways where we can assist and help those people that are being responsible, because a lot of times they're stuck with all the responsibility of doing everything. Is there ways we're possibly looking into that to be more helpful as a state, maybe to help them?
As far as folks becoming insured?
Those that are insured and those that are not insured. And those that, for instance, that don't have insurance, that are hitting other vehicles at times, they get these types of accidents. I don't know if we literally studied something like that or looked into something like this, but I think.
Well,
the
rate of uninsured, according to a national organization in Maryland, is about 14%. So when you go up 97 to go home, and cars are passing you at 80 miles an hour, 1 out of every 8 of them are uninsured. And there's a variety of reasons for that. There are some folks who just lack the responsibility to do it. But, you know, I also believe that law enforcement, to some degree, bears part of the responsibility. The General Assembly a number of years ago said that everybody has to have an insurance card in their possession, and I can tell you that most law enforcement don't ask for the card, and we have been proactive and have talked to the state police and the Maryland Transportation Authority as 2 examples, and there really is no real interest in enforcing that part of the law. And the other thing is, quite frankly, if you get caught driving without insurance and you start paying the fines, at the end of the day, typically the fines are less than if you would have done the right thing and bought the insurance to begin with. So the financial incentive, if you don't have the personal responsibility, is to just, pay, hope for the best, that you don't get caught. But if you do get caught, you pay the fine, and it's still cheaper than buying the insurance in the first place.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Rimmer, just on the page 4, Exhibit 3, where it talks about this surplus funds and the decline. And I
Yes.
want to thank you and your staff for coming to me last week to walk me through it privately, but I'd like the subcommittee to kind of hear a little bit more about that decline and then
Sure.
what next steps occur.
Yep.
I believe some of them might occur during the interim, so I just want to
Sure.
talk about that a little bit.
So when Maryland Auto was created 50 years ago, we, like every other insurance carrier, by law, must keep a surplus. And there's a lot of calculations that go into that, but the surplus and in the beginning, we were funded through a series of assessments. So every year, to Maryland Auto, MAIF, and would go directly into our surplus. As we been a need to do an assessment. And I'll go back to my earlier comment. So we were writing hundreds of thousands of policies, and we operate like every and premiums to pay our claims and our operating expenses. And if you've got millions and millions of dollars that you sustain based on the claim activity. So as our policy count to draw on the investments to pay the losses in claims. So is not only have we used investments to pay as well, which reduces our surplus. So, and the issue with claims ability, and we meet that mission by using an affordability cap. Strive to keep our premiums within 2.5% of the median income in that based on our claims and expenses and so on. If you are in a low-income community, we can't charge enough. We look at our finances, claims activity, premiums, and so on. When we did that work this last year, the results are that 25% in some low-income communities. Keeping people insured, we cannot go into low-income communities and raise our rates 44%. We just you can't run an organization where you collect $1 in revenue and pay out $1.44 result of unsustainable losses and most recently reductions in the stock market, and we will be an assessment, because at the end of the day, if we do an assessment and the state sends a bill to all of those other insurance carriers, we all know who's going to pay that bill, and that's going to be your constituents.
So considering this hasn't happened since I was in kindergarten, what's the process here?
Well, first, thanks for rubbing that in, reminding me.
It's Friday, gotta bring levity to the hearing.
So the process is there's an industry board that manages the process. The state would determine how much of a contribution to our surplus would be needed, and that bill, if you will, would be divvied up among all the auto insurance carriers based on their current market share. So the bigger the pie, the bigger the check.
And what is the magic number, just looking at the chart that we have
So
here?
our anticipated trigger right now is around $14 million.
And when do you anticipate reaching that?
With no changes and the current trajectory, it would be before the end of this year.
Okay,
Which would mean there would be an assessment in 2024.
calendar 24.
Correct,
Okay.
correct.
Okay,
Yeah, the trigger date, our surplus is irrelevant except for 12/31.
okay.
12/31 is the magic date. We either are above the number or below. So as an example, if you drop below in September and you're above, in it's that date.
Okay. And I know this is all actuarial and we're kind of guesstimating this. Any idea what that assessment could look like in order to, and what solvency number are you looking to achieve? Are you getting back to 20 million? What would the assessment, how whole would the assessment make you?
So our objective is to remain above the assessment number.
Okay.
Again, the difficulty is, I can't tell you what the stock market's going to do.
Right.
Number one, and I can't tell you what the standard insurance market is going to do. I mentioned we're writing more business, we're taking more policies. What that means is at some point we're going to be losing money faster because we lose money on every transaction. Refresh my memory, Dave, on the projected deficit for 23, 10 or something?
Yeah, it's going to be around 9.5, 9.6 million, somewhere right around there.
Yeah.
Okay,
And I think the way the statute works is the assessment works to move us back to the trigger point. So it doesn't really give us a big cushion.
okay.
Right.
So it gets you back to 14 million theoretically. Okay. A lot of moving numbers here.
There are, yeah.
Okay, a lot of variables. Okay, so when we discussed in our one-on-one, Mr. Edmer, what I would love to do, considering we're kind of hurtling to this moment in time, if we can find a way for the subcommittees, because I know the House is also very interested in this as well, to stay a little more close in communications through the end of the year, so we
Yep.
have an idea of
Sure.
if we're going to meet that by the magic date,
Yep.
or after, so we can, best prepare for next year.
Sure, and obviously, the magic date is 12/31. We look at these numbers every month, so we're happy to send you just a little snapshot each month of where that number is.
Thank you. Any other questions for the subcommittee?
All right?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay,
Appreciate
we'll be
it.
in touch. Thank you, Samantha. Okay. Next, I believe we've been joined by the Secretary of Planning. Yes, thank you for braving traffic from Towson to come down in time. Are you prepared to?
So it's up there, but not there. So it's just not there? Oh, okay.
I'll go blind, it's okay.
All right.
All right.
Presenting the analysis for the Maryland Department of Planning. The Department of Planning is a cabinet-level protecting the state's historical resources. You can see on the cover chart here that their FY24 fiscal 22, they had a few reversions and cancellations due to the expiration of one-time grants and some COVID-19 deficiency in FY23, which is a brownfields grant from an EPA program. That same grant was also received pollution assessment in conjunction with property owners prior to property redevelopment. So the slice there is management planning and educational outreach. So that includes the Division of Historical and Cultural Programs. And the Maryland Archaeology Conservation Lab, which is the state's archaeological facility. We also have the Operations Division, and some other data and surveying type projects. And then the proposed budget that are set that the agency does not have control over. And then we also have some changes in JPPM. So these are mostly associated the Patterson Center, which is on the National Register of Historic Places. The agency is renovating this space so that it can be available for archaeology lab to greatly expand the capacity for the number of artifacts that they will be able to take in and rate did increase slightly, but I did want to note that they have been filling their vacancies well. Half of their current vacancies have been vacant less than 4 months. So they have 4 pins for the Patterson Center to support those new tours that I mentioned, and then 1 pin for another archive. One of those was converted into one of the pins I just mentioned, and another one was for a grant program that has ended. So there are details on 2 programs described here, which allow local governments to request formal verification for that program, and it is still under federal review on the Census Bureau side. There's also another program where the deadline for both of these programs to file with the feds is June 30th, and I did just want to note that the results urban and rural designations. So this is a delineation that the Census Bureau determines nationwide, and then the agency has and 14% in a rural area. And the agency is also working to extrapolate that data specifically into each of Maryland's called the Semi-Quincentennial Commission. So planning is the state lead for this federal initiative, and also called the America 250. So most are aware of General Washington resigning his commission here in the State House, so that's a big one that they will want to highlight. And last, you can see here Exhibit 4 on page 12. This is the total project funding, and I just wanted to note here 2024 is the current request. Increases as the date gets closer. It will be July 4th, 2026, which will be just a few days into fiscal. There are some startup related costs, including website design and a listening tour and public relations. Or partnerships with Maryland Public Television, Sale Baltimore, and the Baltimore Symphony Orchestra. These are partnerships that the agency is working on. Should comment on what type of agreements are in place with the agencies for which funding is programmed, and what will be done. And we recommend concurring with the governor's allowance. That concludes my formal presentation. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much, Carrie. Questions for the analyst? Okay. With that, thank you. We have Acting Secretary Rebecca of Jefferson Patterson Park and Museum. We don't have enough seats for everybody. I apologize. Madam Secretary, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you all. Thank you, Ms. Cook, again, for your wonderful analysis. We really appreciate it. And thank you to Chairwoman Elfreth. I also really want to thank the team at the Planning Department that are here today with me, and I'll be leaning on, I'm sure. We concur with the recommendations, and we want to address specifically Maryland 250, because I know there's questions about that. This was one of the areas that I've already started to dig into. I believe very much in accountability and metrics and outcomes. As far as the partnerships are concerned, there are several that have been targeted. There have been no agreements actually. If we proceed with some of those, there would be outcomes, metrics, and if some of them don't go through, I am would absolutely want to be reaching out and to work with as Maryland really defines how we want to participate in this national. Much more here, and I'll weigh in wherever I can also. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. Senator Jackson.
Madam Chair, welcome. Thank you. And I will just, with regard to Maryland 250, please keep us informed as you all are working your way through finding folks to sign on, and as those accountability metrics move forward. Maryland sets the pace nationally, and we want to help you in your agency be a part of that as well. And I want to make a quick comment about one of your jewels that you'll find out, Jefferson Patterson Park, Representative Calvert, you have a terrific team of folks there. It is, I would mention to my colleagues, if they have not or if they've never visited that site, it's one of the most breathtaking, picturesque pieces that Maryland has to offer. Maryland has a very storied history, and Jefferson Patterson Park has been a partner with us long before I became a legislator. I've been introduced to that place and ensure that it's a part of who we are, and they do terrific work, and we want to continue to be your partner as we go forward. So, welcome.
Thank you, and I wanted to make sure I introduced Director Caulfield is here also, who's running that park now.
Absolutely, and lastly, Madam Chair, because we are sitting here, you all play a significant role in the redistricting, and for those that challenge that we go through every 4 years. We need that breathtaking view, picturesque view after that. But thank you all for being here. And welcome to the team.
I'll accept that as a motion for a special field trip in the interim to your district senator.
Make sure you play again.
Before Director Hughes, and thank you for being here, and Ron, thank you. Good to see you. You used to be my constituent. You stole him from me. As the Senate rep on Maryland 250, I guess I'd hoped that the director would be here, considering how much our analysis focuses on that commission, and I think the opportunity that it presents for all of our districts and constituents. So I think I'd just like to work with both of you on those metrics and that transparency, and perhaps we can have another informal meeting about it, because I think there's a lot of room for opportunity.
I would welcome that,
Okay.
and I specifically have asked for a few reports and information, and maybe once I get that,
Right.
that would be a good time to discuss further.
Good. And again, just wish she would be here. Okay.
That I will take responsibility
Okay.
for, because I felt that it was important that we really understand where it's at and its status, and I will take responsibility for the next
I
step.
appreciate that.
Thank you.
And we'll chat. Okay. Director Hughes, good to see you.
Thank you.
Also my constituent. So.
That's right.
Any other thoughts, questions?
No, I just follow good Senator lead about this following up with how we move forward with this.
Yes.
Great, thank you.
Director Hughes, I do have one question for you, because
Yes.
we've talked about this before.
Yes.
From my constituents, the status or what you need to put online or digitize the tax credit process.
Yes, I thought that question might come up. And so I will tell you, we have been waiting for the National Park Service to come up with an electronic tax credit application for the program that they administer, which our state program is modeled off of in terms of the commercial component. We do receive monthly reports from them, but I have to say that we really hope they'd be able to provide the leadership in terms of a structure for an electronic application, that it doesn't look like what they're going to be creating, because it perhaps needs to be universal across the nation, is going to be as maybe user-friendly as we would really like it to be. So our hope is, as we're developing an E-106 application process, so that through our review and compliance program, we can have people, agencies, other entities who are applying to us for other programs submit materials. This would be a state tax credit application process through that electronic portal, could be linked together. I think while we are making good progress, and certainly the Secretary we've discussed, our goal is to get this E-106 system in place by the end of the year, and the tax credit application being a component of that. We're going to continue to push on that and have conversations with IT staff about what are some what is our timeline, what are some deadlines in that process, so that we can make that goal, because we have been talking about an electronic tax credit application for some time, I recognize.
And I feel like I have to make this comment every hearing with various departments and agencies, but it is a new day, and we are your partners. So please let us know what you need to achieve that goal, because I do think it's 2023, and it's about time that we figure that one out. So please just let us know what you need to achieve that together.
I just want to concur. I've dealt with online portals. It's well past time for this, and so I'm going to work very closely with the director to make sure we figure out how to get this done.
Okay. Thank you. Any further questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
I hope that was painless.
Look forward to getting to know you all more. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Last but certainly not least, I'm sorry, we have a number of witnesses signed up for Department of Planning. We have written testimony committee from Carol Benson, Lucille Walker, Maria Sophia, and written testimony from those folks. Director Hughes already testified. We have at least one, perhaps two in-person witnesses, Lindsay Baker from Maryland Humanities, and perhaps Gail Owings from Eastern Shore Heritage, Inc., if they want to come up.
Before they come up, I thought Ms. Walker was going to be here today. She has written testimony.
Yes.
And as a comment, which kind of leads to a lot of what's going on here, Maryland, Southern Maryland specifically has been designated a National Heritage Area. And Ms. Lucille Walker and your office had played an instrumental part in that. So just wanted to lend that, and I was hoping she would be here to be able to speak to that.
Thank you, Senator.
Very storied history, good stuff going on. So, thanks.
Okay. Ms. Baker? Yes. And just a reminder, we have a 3-minute standard.
Okay,
Thank
sure.
you.
Well, first of all, thank you for allowing us to come today and for your support over the years. This is Alexandra Sonatis, Director of Programs for Maryland Humanities. So if we go into questions that I can't answer, she's here to help me out. Year with funding from the state of $500,000. With that funding, we were able to give out 50 grants of $10,000 each to amendment to get that funding back in. Just to reiterate, all the funding that we received, we sent back out around the state, and we know we have annual operating budget at $500,000 of organizations to apply, and then they're able to utilize that funding for salaries, for we hope that if a budget amendment is possible, that you are all in support of it.
Thank you, and thank you at the critical time for a lot of our nonprofits for getting that money out in the street and supporting them during COVID was incredibly important to all of our districts. We appreciate that, and you have requested this of the governor for supplemental. Is that correct?
Yes.
Wonderful. Okay. Any questions? Thank you very much.
Thank you. Congratulations on the National Heritage Area.
Okay. And there was a bit of confusion with Miss Owings. Seeing none? Okay. Yes.
My name is Brandon Rosario. I'm Lucille Walker's intern, actually.
Of course, yeah.
Unfortunately, Ms. Walker and Ms. Owings could not make it today, but I came in their stead just to show our support for the planning budget and to speak to the importance of as a state-based heritage area, of which we have 13. These heritage areas help to provide funding is the Southern Maryland Heritage Area, otherwise known as Destination Southern Maryland, and as Senator Jackson so kindly but all in all, we just wanted to say that it's a really big deal for the plan.
Where are you in school?
So I just graduated from the University of Maryland, and I've been working with Lucille Walker for about a year now.
Wonderful. Great. Well, very well done. Senator Jackson?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Brandon, thank you for stepping up and kind of mentioning that because, if we don't spread this information, folks don't know how great Maryland is.
Absolutely.
And the work that's there. And and just hold your hat. You've been with Ms. Walker for a short period of time. You're about to get your master's through her with the knowledge that she actually will impart to you. But cherish it, and if you think about our entire university system and colleges, they have been a huge part of this ability for us to become a national heritage area. College of Southern Maryland, the other community colleges surrounding Anne Arundel, Prince George's, Howard, and the others, and also Southern Maryland, St. Mary's College of Maryland, University of College Park. We touch so many folks, and it's great to see a young person such as yourself getting that influence from such a dynamic person, and a cause. So, thank you.
Thank you, Senator. That really means a lot, and thank you all.
Thank you. Okay, that concludes the hearing on Department of Planning. Moving on to Maryland Environmental Service. Carrie, you're up again. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Again, Carrie Cook. Again, moving on. Service provides technical services to state and local agencies, including things like water and wastewater, funds from the state. Their operating budget summary here. So from equipment as well as debt payments, and they do still have a positive fund balance, or their largely due to timelines for projects. When projects are completed, the revenues associated with the project is going to go down. When state projects that they perform for other state agencies, followed by local governments as well. And then of solid waste are the largest slices there. And then on page 4, we're seeing the change in For example, in solid waste, they completed the Prince George's County Recycling Center renovation project and also reclassifying This is just the operating expense change from the working to the allowance. And capital construction due to inflation. So on page doing projects at correctional facilities across the state, as well as the Park Service and juvenile services as well. And then moving on to the issues section, so Back River Wastewater Treatment Plant, as the committee March, former Secretary Grumbles directed MES to take over the plant, and he does have the legal authority to do so, given inspection about a week prior, which found several very important non-compliance issues, and they issued a 48-hour deadline. permit issued by MDE for the facility, which is a standard for these types of facilities, and it has numerous specific stipulations. Total suspended solids, total nitrogen, and total phosphorus. There were other concerns regarding functionality of equipment, plant in late March. They assigned operators and maintenance staff. The directive also required the agency to assess the now to the staff that MES assigned to the plant. This is on page 11. So you can see here, this is the maintenance staff. Average of over 30% of staff throughout the state were assigned to this facility for 9 months. The agency did make an effort demonstrates the hours worked at the facility over that time period as well. You can see over 800 hours in both April and about 10% of their operations staff were there throughout the spring. And in terms of getting the facility permit compliance issues, their July 8th report notes that the 3 discharges of concern met the parameters that year because it is measured annually and it was out of compliance before, but it did meet the prorated adjusted goal that was mentioned. That July date, the agency got them into compliance. They switched more to a more management role for construction, procuring additional staff assigned to the plant full-time, but the agency is working on the completion of 2 major capital projects, essentially with installation and getting all that equipment online. The current order allows MES to stay out specific parameters for the reimbursement process, the city reimbursing MES for their services. They should also be prepared to discuss the best practices used to bring the facility into compliance and lessons learned and that they can apply. 2021. As the committee recalls, many of these issues were covered in last year's analysis, but there were a few that happened in their auditors perform. This assessment had a number of recommendations, one of them being a 5-year strategic plan. Employees and clients. And the goal was to identify organizational strengths and weaknesses to inform those measurable or quantifiable benchmarks. So the agency should comment on the performance indicators discussed in the strategic plan assessment. was the development of a charter and bylaws. The Assistant Attorney General for the agency, as well as the outlined in statute in the Natural Resources article. The agency has also not to date acted on the creation of the bylaws. Expenses audit. So they hired, again, the same auditing firm to complete this assessment. They looked at a 1-year period. Were not submitted for reimbursement within the timeframe required due to their internal policies. However, another element of the MES Reform Act is a new annual greenhouse gas reporting requirement. And highlighted what they are doing in terms of projects and research throughout their areas of technical expertise. And then finally, that are not covered as much in their annual audit. So this is the undesignated unrestricted net assets, which is basically their fund balance in FY 2023. Exhibit 10 is their overhead rates. So this is the rates that the agency rate has remained quite steady over several years. The TES, Technical and Environmental Services rate, which is that light blue, has overhead costs for these types of projects and fewer billable labor projects. And then there's also a downward trend in the red line, which is water project reserve funds. The first 3 of these funds are in statute, and the 4th was recently created by the board. Any retentions or expends from these funds, but the agency did retain $1.7 million in that last fund, the ECI, in fiscal 2022. The recommended action is that MES continue to provide that funding statement with all
Analyst, Senator Jackson.
Thank you. Quick question. You mentioned that the request for the organizational structure as well as the, so you mentioned the agency did not feel because of
creating a charter and bylaws. The agency and their attorney general, or excuse me, the board and the attorney general felt that they did not need to create the charter because yet, but I think the agency is going to address that in their testimony.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
Okay. That being said, Dr. Glass, our Executive Director of MES. We also have Mr. Smolkin, Chair of the Board of Directors, Miss Ellen, I have Furketic. You're such a good friend, and I always Mr. Patel and Mr. Tosi, all from MES. And Dr. Glass, take it away.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and members of the committee. For the record, my name is Dr. Charles Glass, and as mentioned, Deputy Furketic is with me today. could not be with us today. He was with us yesterday. So first, just to say thank you to Ms. Cook, first year. And we'll open it up for any questions you may have for us. So the Back River wastewater treatment plant and the entire stretch goal to assist in that manner. We successfully worked with Baltimore City and we really feel proud of the entire experience. We are now, as that are being provided, and we're committed to stay until they're installed, and Baltimore City is committed to letting us do that. Or a consent agreement between Baltimore City and the Maryland Department of Environment for us to stay until April 30th of this year. Caveat that we are a non-appropriated state agency, and we have to be compensated for our work. We have tried done in conjunction with MDE, but the two capital projects are progressing. They're both KPIs, our key performance indicators, and a strategic plan that was developed as a part of the MES Reform Act, as a part of the performance management system out of MDOT during the Pete Ron years, and it's based on a quarterly Analyze Act cycle that many consulting firms and books have been written about. So MES is a billable organization, so it's focus on our three pillars, which is safety, level of service, and education and training. There have been 7 fatalities in the history of MES. Keep it that way and ensure that that's happening to the best of our ability. When there is a fatality in the solid waste industry in the state of Maryland, we feel very, very, very strongly about safety first before finances, before any other operational goals. We focus on a level of service to our clients and a level of service to our staff. So that's that's measured, and we're going to continue to refine the measurement. Operators out of our 130 or so, 140 operators, is that and we want it to always be a part, even though our environmental specialists, which is the other core part of our organization, those environmental specialists have a career track, and we have veterans that stay forever, like deputy, but we also have a lot of people that they get their skills up and they go to the counties, they go to the state and the full private sector. So anyway, that's what those KPIs are about. It's going to be an iterative process, and we'll keep we are under statute to regulations, all of which are laws that we have to charter based on that fact. The bylaws, they are going to work on it as management. We're as far as the funding statement, DLS recommends that we continue that, and we concur completely. And with that, we'll take any questions.
Went from being a bit of a challenge for this the General Assembly just a few short years ago, through no fault of with the 2 wastewater treatment plants. So I just want to commend you and your team for stepping up in that way. There's a tremendous amount of work ahead of us. Senator Salling, then Senator Jackson.
Well, first of all, I want to thank you for the information. We've come a long way. As you know, Budget and Tax visiting the plant, others visiting a plant, I personally visiting a plant, my delegation visiting a plant, going back and visiting a plant again, but getting all the assessments and getting all the information, emailing us, all the work that's been done. I personally want to thank you.
Thanks, Senator.
Because it took a lot of effort and a lot of hard work to almost get back to where we were in 2019, because I know from where we were at, as we stated before, we were at a critical moment, as we talked about that. And knowing, for instance, personnel, that's been a struggle. Knowing just the operations, and knowing the ongoing operations and the maintenance that is going on, again, appreciated. But making sure, more than anything, some of the things we've talked about, what we continue to talk about, how are we now, at this very moment, looking in areas where we've talked about, and how are we pursuing, but how is this going now in personnel? Trying to get the personnel, trying to get the qualified personnel. We've talked about it, but I know it's hard. It's not very simple to say we can get a chemist, we can get a person that does this type of work. And I know areas, they're not easy, and you said it. They're taking from one area and they're going to another area. But is there ways we can keep, I know incentive, I know it's not easy, but finding ways where we can get these qualified people to stay there and continue to work there, or just to get them in the first place? Thank you.
So Deputy seems like she's fidgeting, like she wants
No,
to say something.
no.
And I'll pass to her.
You may not want me to talk right now.
All right, well, so just to be clear, it's not our facility.
No.
We don't operate and maintain it. For us, we've done a lot in the last 7 months to get our vacancy rate from 8-9% to under 5%, 4.14, I think it was this week. So, you know, we did a lot of pushing. There was change in some of the management positions, and there were very clear statements for different job classifications, which including our operators, that this is how we're going to proceed. You're going to have this career path. You're going to receive these incentives if you get your education done, and we're here for you as long as you want to be with us. So there's the culture that you form in an organization. We're focused on culture. There's a book called Reculturing that I share with the executive leadership team. We focus on it. We focus on it through our performance management system. And, you know, we see the differences in how we operate and then Baltimore City DPW. They're clear differences. But as far as their level of staffing, what they need to do, we wrote an intense report that has some of that information in it, But right now, we are strictly focused on partnership, whatever the outcomes of the General Assembly's process this year, and we're ready to serve and help in whatever way we can.
And you have, and you've assisted, which is so important. And again, we've come a long way to where we were. And I know you've given them the right information to them to move forward. And we're doing all that we can, as we just had a briefing with the county executive and the mayor.
Yes.
Which just happened. And we want to continue to work with them. And it's important just to know, because with your assistance, it's acknowledged and it's been talked about. You guys made a difference. And
Yes.
we want to continue to make a difference, because it's obvious you're permanently not going to be there, of course. But we want to make sure that if there's ways where we can improve, we can continue to do better with the county working with the city and continuing to move them forward. Is there something that we need to move forward with? Because again, we can't say it again. You made the difference, and we see that. Is there something that we could do better to help them out? Because I know, I can't say it again. It's just, to me, it's my backyard, as you know.
I know,
Right.
sir. Yes.
I'm very concerned about it. I'm going to be adamant about it. I have no choice. Because again, I just got a letter today from the people. And you won't believe, they want to change the name of Back River. They don't want to be called Back River anymore. I mean, that's the kind of things that I get. And it's like, but at the same time, again, I can't say it enough. I want to thank you. I want to thank you. Because you probably haven't heard that enough. I want to thank you. But I just, more than anything, want to make sure that when you're on, that we're moving forward. That's all. Thank you.
Dr. Gus, could we get a copy of that report if we haven't already?
Yeah. Get it to you directly.
Thank you very much. And Senator, I know they've been proactive in being a further part of the solution, and I think there could possibly be a role to play with state support for you to kind of continue that support, not just for the two plants in question, but since we have a staffing crisis across not just the state, but this particular industry, I hope that we can continue those conversations about you playing a greater role in the workforce pipeline. If Senator Rosepep were here, he would use the magic word apprenticeships.
Which we have, yeah.
We will.
A good program.
Continue. So I feel like I've asked everybody today, let's stay close for the next 67 days, but I know that we will. Senator Jackson.
Thank you. I'm glad the chair spoke on behalf of Senator Rosepep and Senator Sowling. And look, I think it's huge across all of our industries. And so, having been one of the folks who sat on one of those committees who was kind of looking at this matter in the past, I'm ecstatic that you guys are where you are, and obviously you know what I'm talking about. So, thank you for the work you guys are doing on the plants. Thank you for the work you've done in my home county of Prince George's and Montgomery. But those are huge, the two largest counties, and coming up with solutions and having partners certainly makes better for our environment. Love the 3 keys you're operating off. As we're all leaders, but more being students of leaders, understanding that inclusivity that I'm seeing that you guys have with your folks and your industry is huge. A couple of things. We talk about the reimbursement that you're getting from the city, the reimbursement through either the consent decree or whatever to ensure that you guys stay. That reimbursement, do we know, Madam Chair, if that reimbursement is coming from the consent? Is it coming from the city? Is it eventually coming back to us here in the state? I'd like to know a little bit more about that. A little bit more about that.
I can.
Oh,
most definitely.
Okay.
So it's in statute that if we're ordered in by MDE, so at the start, we're ordered in by MDE, it's in statute that the municipality will pay us. And there's a series of steps to ensure that we're compensated by the jurisdiction. And we are practically 100% current as far as Baltimore City paying MES for the services rendered.
That's great. Thank you. That's great to hear and to know. You talked about, we've all mentioned the apprenticeship, but you talk about briefly, or you can send us something, about your relationship with our higher education institutions, right? So our high schools are coupling, their academic growth with the community college for the programs. Your relationship with in that regard, as well as our university system and some other partners that are out there, that's huge as we go forth. So if folks know what you offer, then
Sure.
they may aspire, and they know how it's made relative to themselves and their communities is a huge step. And lastly, could you speak briefly or talk about the brownfield grants that are afforded your office and others? I live in the southern part of Prince George's. I represent Charles, Prince George's, and then we have these power plants that are being decommissioned, folks, and we're going to be leaning on you all a lot as they're being decommissioned. What does that mean for our communities? Are they environmentally sound? Who's ensuring that? And beyond that, what happens afterwards? Are there economic development opportunities? And so that process, I know that's may be a lot, may not be for the experts, but I think it's a rich conversation that we need. And again, from a technical assistance and educational background and job opportunities background, I think that's something else that can be, if you probably are, if you're not already exploring, you want to be a partner in that. So, thank you, Madam Chair.
Oh,
Sorry
okay.
for
I
that.
can answer those questions now,
Please,
Senator.
please.
If you,
but also, if we could stay in touch about those things.
Most definitely.
because-
So during my confirmation hearings 2 years ago, Senator Hayes asked that I make sure that I reach out to the historically black colleges and universities. I taught at Howard University for 17 years, if you didn't know. So I did write a letter to all of the presidents, and I've been engaged with them. I serve on the College of Engineering and IT's board at UMBC. I'm in the Leadership Fellows Program. I'm an alumnus of Hopkins, and I'm on a Leadership Fellows Program, and I'm supposed to join
Hopkins is a
their
good place. Hopkins is a
environmental
good
engineering.
place.
Yeah, it's great. Blue Jays. So I'm joining their Environmental Health and Engineering Board. I visited Howard Community College, Prince George's Community College, Hartford Community College, Chesapeake Community College. And so
You went to Catonsville, too, didn't you?
I went to Catonsville,
Yeah.
it's community college. So I'm visiting, if the presidents will host me, I meet with them. If I'm passed to a dean, and I've been, because we need high school GED, AAA, or bachelor's degrees, and master's and PhDs if they come to us, I'm engaging with the whole gamut. We are going to high schools. Staff is, part of the way we filled our vacancies is that we don't just rely on HR to recruit. Everyone in the management team is going everywhere. So we have a problem right now with Cheltenham staffing, and staff yesterday went and put up flyers in the libraries, in the bus stops, wherever they could. They checked the grocery stores, they checked everywhere. So we're like all hands on deck, and people are enjoying it in the organization. They're enjoying interacting with young people. We're enjoying the people. We have interns from UMBC, College Park. I want more from the HBCUs. I'm also a legacy still on the Transportation Institute at Morgan State. So because of the academic experience and because of knowing that that's where our solution is, we recruit so heavily that I'm just trying to have, so I've shared, last point on this, I shared with the chief engineer at WSSC some of my candidates. In Prince George's County, there's a low-impact development center. I shared some of the candidates with Chi Epsilon, the Engineering Honor Society at University of Maryland College Park, sent us their database of kids. I don't know if any of the 3.8s are going to come to MES, but we were full of our engineers and we passed them. So that's the answer to that question. We're fully engaged with everyone in the higher education. I had dinner last night with Peter Goodwin of University of Maryland Center for Environmental Studies, and that engagement from a scientific level. So that's the university part.
Dr. West, can I pull on that thread a little bit more? Very often, we just have a right-hand, left-hand issue when it comes to particularly workforce training and higher ed.
Mm-hmm.
So even though we are not Education Business Administration Subcommittee of the budget, we work very closely with that subcommittee. If you have any thoughts for us that we can pass on in terms of, we appreciate the outreach you've done and and kind of the informal relationships you're building. But what structurally at our community colleges in particular should the state and this larger committee be thinking about in terms of closing the loops on some of those workforce pipeline challenges that we have?
Will do.
Okay.
I mean, I have off the top of my mind answer that every single one of the presidents that I've visited, and I'm going back to the schools that accepted a visit, Carroll County Community College too. The schools that accepted a visit, that I met with the president or I met with the dean, go back to them, Chesapeake College, go back to them and say, well, these are some needs in our core functions, and we don't invest, but we'd like you to know that we want to recruit your students and we want to stay engaged. As a former faculty member, you can't just go to the schools one time and say, song and dance, tell them how great you are, and then think that they're going to send their best kids. That's what I didn't send students to those places. So, and we're working on not a request from Delegate Corman, but he makes allusions to us. He does watch us, and we're preparing everything we did in the last 7 months to share with whomever wants it. We have different capabilities than some state agencies, but some of the things are just effort, and having the state at its core participate in that effort would fill some of the vacancies.
You don't invest, but we do. So we're giving you a lot of homework today.
College of Southern Maryland as well.
Right. But if you wouldn't
Covers
mind,
all your southern counties, but I got you.
No, but they've got a really good program for water and wastewater
Brand new
operators.
president who just came, and so Dr. Wilson. So
we're not going to solve this problem if we continue to work in silos. So I appreciate your thoughts being on the industry side of what we need to do better from a state investment. We appreciate that. And I apologize for the tangent.
No,
Thank you.
no problem. And Senator Jackson, on the second part of your question, brownfields, decommissioning, et cetera. So we really, I'm going to say because there's one manager in our technical environmental services group that is interested in environmental justice, diversity, equity, inclusion, environmental justice issues. I am a colleague with Dr. Wilson at the University of Maryland, and we are launching slowly. We're not invested in, so I can't take resources and just do it. She has a small grant from Baltimore County, and she's helping in Baltimore County already with that small grant, and it's about public school education and knowing about EJ. And the town of Eagle Harbor reached out to us through the Low Impact Development Center, Chalk Point, and they have a request for water sampling and sediment to know what the situation is. And EJ 40 and EPA grants are coming out through the environmental finance centers. I don't have all the details yet, but a colleague of mine that's up in New York called and said, there's a YouTube video of Eagle Harbor, if you haven't seen it, and what they want. And I would like MES to have the type of partnership in EJ where we're not going to replace, we do intend to go to the next EJ committee meeting at MDE. Delegate Boyce invited me to attend and present what we're doing, and all we need to do is connect the funding. We would like communities that want environmental work done we would like to connect them to the grants. They can get the grants and pay us, and we create that loop of we'll go anywhere in the state. You have an environmental problem, you want some research done. We'll facilitate it with the university structure as well and the environmental finance centers, and that loop can take place. So I wanted to answer that question.
Well, I'm glad you mentioned that because Eagle Harbor is in my district, and there's an environmental actually, obviously interest, but we're in the process of setting up some meetings. I'm glad to hear you're amenable to be there, and we've got a former riverkeeper who's involved in that as well, and the EJ is huge where we are. So, thank you, Madam Chair.
And just the final point, you built up a tremendous amount of goodwill in these last few years, especially since in your tenure, Dr. Glass. And I just recommend on the bylaws issue, if you could keep Senator McCrae and Delegate Corman close to the vest on that, considering their work on the reforms. I just recommend that would go a long way with them.
Madam Chair, my only comment is that, it is clear that I work for the board now, and I will help them as much as I can to execute those bylaws before the next term. And it's not, people say it all the time, but it is not just me. The entire executive team, the entire management structure, the entire staff, We're all moving in the same direction as one, and it's an incredible team. It's the best of MES, of Maryland State employees, and I've never been on a better team. So thank you.
We've always been good. It was just that we were kind of hidden for a long time. And when we did come out of the hiding, it wasn't in a good way, but we've had a lot of good people. There are quite a few that have been there as long as I have. I've been there 34 years. There are others that have been there longer. The folks that are out there in the field and, you know, the scientists that we have are working hard every day. They want to do the right thing. They believe in our mission and want to do good things for the environment in Maryland.
Thank you all very much, and thank you to your team.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you.
Okay, with that, concludes our hearings for today. Everybody have a lovely weekend. Thank you to the team.